Very nice to have you here today. Here we are with Janice Marturano. Janice is the founder and director of the Institute of Mindful Leadership, and is a non-profit organization, right, that
Yes.
trains and supports leaders to explore about mindfulness and the excellence on leadership.
Yes.
And Janice just wrote a book. We can find it in Spanish, Mindfulness y Liderazgo. It's a fantastic book. I really enjoyed to read it.
Oh, thank you.
And tell us a little bit about this institute and this beautiful project, Janice.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm delighted to be here, and we're very excited that the book is now available in Spanish.
Yes.
Mindful Leadership and the Institute began when I was a vice president at General Mills, which is a Fortune 200 company in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I began teaching mindful leadership there to officers and directors originally, and then to employees at all levels of the organization. Over many years, about 4 or 5 years of developing this curriculum, which is really the intersection of developing great leadership
Mm-hmm.
excellence, and this cultivation of the mind's innate capacities. And it focuses around what we call the 4 fundamentals of leadership excellence:
Mm-hmm.
focus, clarity, creativity, and compassion. And what we found at the Institute over time, the demand for mindful leadership training exceeded what I could do while I was still at General Mills as a vice president, and people outside of General Mills now wanted the training. And so I left General Mills and founded the nonprofit. And that was about 6 years ago. I've been teaching mindful leadership, though, for more than a decade, and have had the great privilege of doing that with leaders from around the world.
Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful, wonderful project. And one of the things you explain in the book that really struck me is that unexpectedly your mom passed away, and unexpectedly 6 months after your father passed away, and you didn't have time for the mourning, right? And this is something that's the first thing that people say, I don't have time to do mindfulness, to sit down and create this mental space.
Mm-hmm.
So how can turn this around? How can we find this space and explain the importance of that to people?
Well, first, to explain the importance of it, all of this was happening to me. So I had this coming together of both professional crises, in that I was asked to lead a very large acquisition deal. I had the personal crises, which were the passing away of my parents, very close in time, who I was very close to. And at the same time, I had school-age children. I had this vice president position. I was a volunteer, and what I call the 21st century juggler. So it's what many of us have. We have many balls in the air that we're trying to juggle and keep in the air, and at the same time try to be our best selves. And very quickly we can find ourselves on a kind of treadmill where, to get through the day, we go into an autopilot mode. So we're not making conscious choices anymore. We're just checking the box. We're doing what we have to do just to stay afloat, or to keep all those balls in the air. Well, I also realized that if I give people a lot of other things to do to train the mind, well, then that's just adding to the to-do list. So the challenge was, how do I take everything I know about what great leaders in the 21st century need, that focus, clarity, creativity, and compassion, and do it in a way that people can customize and fit into their own schedules. And one of the key components to the curriculum is what we call purposeful pauses. So purposeful pauses are very small mini trainings that we drop into the day in particular ways that people are trained to do. And these purposeful pauses give you those moments of space. And instead of us kind of ramping up through our day faster and faster and faster, we fall asleep exhausted, we wake up with the alarm and we do it again. It starts to punch holes in the day and gives us chances to reset. And they could be as simple as taking a purposeful pause with a cup of coffee, walking down the hallway, taking a set of stairs. There's many, many ways to do it. And we encourage people to make that as much a part of their training as 10 or 20 minutes of meditation, and also leadership reflection, which is a critical part of this training as well. Those are the 3 parts.
There's 3 parts. So
meditation, leadership reflection, purposeful pause. Those are the 3 parts of the Institute for Mindful Leadership's curriculum.
In your book, you're also talking about this 10 minutes chair meditation. So people, leaders are willing to do that, to put aside the computer, the telephone, the iPad, everything, and not answer the phone. And
well, and
10 minutes.
10 minutes, and it's called the desk chair body scan. And it's a way for anyone to say, notice, first of all, we notice that, our body feels tense. Maybe for you it might be, I get tension in my neck, or my stomach feels tight, or I have pain in my lower back. You start to get these signals. Our body tells us something's up, something's not right, something's not in an equilibrium place. And that's a perfect time to take 10 minutes. And some people tell me, I can't sit at my desk for 10 minutes because people keep interrupting me. And I've had people be very creative about wanting to take that 10 minutes in the middle of the day. They go out to their car. They sit in their car for 10 minutes. Or they
go away.
They go away. They walk away from their office and they find some place. Maybe it's an empty little corner somewhere. And they just invest 10 minutes. And it makes their whole afternoon very different.
That's right. It makes a difference, right? Big difference before and after.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
The most important thing is to have the experience of that, I believe, so that they can test it on themselves and see the difference, and this clarity, attention, creativity, and compassion that you're talking about.
That's right. And as soon as if you just try it, we invite people to say, you don't have to agree with this, you don't have to say this is what I want to do, just be curious. If you can come and be to a workshop or a retreat and just be open and curious about mindful leadership that much, and then see for yourself, try it. What do you notice in just 10 minutes? What do you notice? And oftentimes when people say, can you commit to trying the experiments? In the book there's a week by week beginning approach. Try it for 1 week. See if you begin to notice, or if other people begin to notice something different.
That's right. People from your team, for example, right?
From your team, from your family.
From your family, right?
Very often other people notice mindful leaders' changes before the leaders themselves do. They start to notice. Their children notice, their spouses notice, and members of their team notice. One of the most common things that people begin to notice is we teach people about mindful communication in the curriculum.
Yes.
And so when they put that in place, and all of a sudden there's a different connection felt when someone comes into your office, sits across the desk from you, and wants to share something with you, and they leave feeling heard, as opposed to you thinking, yes, you're trying to pay attention, but you're also thinking about your next meeting, or the one you just left, or you have one eye on your computer. And when you start to learn how to train your mind to really fully attend, it's felt by the other person, and so people leave feeling heard and respected.
For leaders themselves, as you mentioned in the book many times, they attend meetings or important phone calls, and they're not mindful there, right?
That's right.
So I guess if they're trained into being present and being mindful there, it's going to be another quality of conversation and achieving what they're pursuing as well, right?
Great point. Yes, much more productive, because we all know that we sit on many of those conference calls, we sit in many meetings, and nothing happens because people really aren't there. They're distracted. They're looking at their phone, they're thinking of something else. And when we learn to notice first that I'm not present, that's the very first thing. People always ask me, how do I know if it's working? This mindful leadership training, how do I know it's working?
Yeah, we want data, we want results.
Right. So the first thing that I tell them is the first thing you'll notice is when you're not present. And it could be that you're home with your 3-year-old and all of a sudden your 3-year-old's tugging on your pant leg and saying, "Are you here?" And you're recognizing that I'm not here. You know, even if I'm looking right at my 3-year-old, I'm not here. My mind is at work.
The body is here, but the mind is not. Under her is on.
Yes, and we think people don't notice that. I mean, we think that as long as we're making eye contact, but that's not true. And people feel when we're present, and they feel when we're not.
In your book, Janice, you talk about finding this time of silence and allow themselves to listen to their intuition. I wonder, how is that received? What is your experience about with readers? No, when you talk about intuition with them, this is business, and in business 1 + 1 is 2, and there's no about intuition, or no time for silence, right? And so, but we know how important is that. So how can how you address this issue and your workshops and
Yes. So one of the ways that we invite people to answer that question for themselves is to simply ask a very common business problem, or present a business problem, which is, what do you do when no more data will answer the question, when this is brand new, you're in a situation where there's nobody else to talk to, you've talked to everyone you can, there is no data around this situation, it's something new, or it's something novel, or it's something very edgy, or whatever it is, what do you do? The buck stops with you. You have to decide, what do you rely on? There's no more data to answer this question. So what do you rely on? And usually I get leaders say, oh, well, I go with my gut. I go with, that expression, I go with my gut. Sure. Well, that's your wisdom. That's your intuition. Right. That's what that gut is. And so then we get to say, well, wouldn't it be nice if you actually could train yourself to have greater access to that wisdom? So wisdom is really what we're talking about here. We're very well analytically trained as professionals. We train our minds to be analytical. We now know that we can also train innate capacities of the mind to be more focused and clear, creative and compassionate. That's where the wisdom comes in. It's allowing, particularly the creativity and innovation piece, it's allowing us, our brains, to put things together in new and novel ways. And the only way it can do that is when we have space.
When you stop, actually.
When we have space. If your mind is on this to-do list, constant run, constant treadmill, there's no space, your chances of being innovative are very small. And we all know this. I talk about this in terms of the magic of shower water. So we might be
the shower. We had a lot of great ideas.
We do. And the reason is we wake up in the morning before our mind gets all caught up in our to-do list and all our busyness, and we're in the shower. In that nighttime and in that early morning, the mind has actually had some space to put things together. And that's why we have those aha moments in the shower. It's not the magic of shower water. It is that wisdom that found a little opening before we get busy again.
That's right. That's great. Janice, in your book you talk about pillows, emptying the mind, and other myths about mindfulness.
Yes, there's many misconceptions about mindfulness, and some people think, well, I have to sit on the floor on a cushion. No, you don't. Sitting on a cushion does not make you a better meditator. Clearing the mind, that if I meditate, well, then I'll be able to clear my mind. No, you're not going to clear your mind. We don't want you to clear your mind. The nature of the mind is that there will be thoughts, and they will pass through the mind. But the training in mindful leadership teaches people that we can begin to notice thinking, the process of thinking. And that's a big surprise to professionals especially, that in fact they're not their thoughts, that I am not my thoughts. And that I can, through training, begin to notice thoughts as they arise in my mind and as they dissolve. And the reason that that is so critically important is, again, about that space. That when we begin to have this relationship to thinking and to thoughts, that is, oh, it's just a thought. It may or may not be true. It may or may not be aligned with who I am or what I believe. And it allows me to respond to that thought rather than react to it. And it allows me to see, oh, I may be feeling angry. I'm not an angry person. Those kinds of distinctions. And when we think about what we want in leadership excellence, we're talking about wanting every person to be able to make conscious choices that align with who they are and what they believe. And that requires us to have that kind of spaciousness. So no, we're not about clearing your mind of thoughts. Anyone who's telling you we're going to clear your mind is not
it might happen
telling you something that is really going to happen. It may be that you, in training, noticing your thoughts, and that's a bit of an advanced training in our curriculum. It takes a little bit of expertise with other practices to be able to get there, but when you do get there, the ability to notice thoughts as they arise and as they dissolve, you may also notice that there are spaces between your thoughts at some practices. And other practices, maybe not. It might be one thought after another, a whole waterfall of thoughts. But there will be times in practices when there will be space between thoughts. But that's not pushing thoughts away.
Do you call it a certain name, this space between thoughts?
No, it's just, in the practice it's called awareness of thoughts. Yes.
Nice. And I think you've done a lot of behavioral research and for leaders that they go to the retreats on mindfulness, and so there is research on behaviors, no? Before and after.
Yes.
Going to retreats.
Yes, through retreats, and also when we go into organizations. This is the most of our most recent research on mindful leadership. Other universities have done the research on our curriculum, our mindful leadership curriculum, but they go in and they ask employees a set of questions before, and then the employees go through training, and then those questions are repeated afterwards. And we see dramatic changes. And to give you an example, one of the questions we was asked of employees was, I noticed that I'm distracted about thoughts about work while I'm at home, and about home while I'm at work. And I think all of us can relate to that question of, I'm at home, but I'm always thinking about work, or I'm at work and I'm always thinking about my children or my friends or my spouse. And so when we ask them how frequently, how true is that for you? Is it everything from almost always to almost never, and 6 gradations in between? We get the top 2, 70% of people saying, I'm distracted by those thoughts. Almost always, or very frequently, those top 2 boxes. And at the end, that same 70% are in the bottom 2 boxes. What changes is you begin to realize that you're not a victim of your thinking, that you can notice, oh, that's thinking about my 10 o'clock meeting tomorrow. I'm going to redirect my attention to my 3-year-old. And that's what we begin, that's the training, that redirection, that's the training. Just like we train our body, we can train our mind.
That's right, so that we can disattach from the thoughts. We're not the thoughts. We identify too much with what we're thinking, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And for leaders, how is that translated in the workplace?
Well, when we're sitting in a conference room and we're trying to have strategic conversations with our team, and yet all we're really thinking about is, what am I going to make for dinner later tonight? Or did my daughter remember her homework? Or I had that fight with my partner this morning. I'm not here. And if I'm not here, we're back to that. Your presence is felt and your absence is also felt. My ability to listen deeply is affected by that. So when we notice, it's not that it won't happen, that thought might not pop in, but what changes is we notice when we're not here in that room, in that conference room, and we're able to redirect our attention back in. And when we do that, we notice that all of a sudden we have a greater capacity to make those conscious choices and get things done.
Make better decisions.
Better decisions and more productivity, yes.
when we talk about the excellence of leadership, you talk about attention, clarity, creativity, and compassion. And in your book, you mentioned that compassion is probably the most transformative aspect on this mindful leadership.
Personally, I think it's one of the most difficult, and it certainly begins to be felt personally more than perhaps the other three. But you need all four. But the compassion, the way the Institute for Mindful Leadership defines compassion as understanding, deep understanding. When we have that deep understanding, what we often notice is a pull toward an act of kindness. And the most difficult kind of compassion for professionals is, perhaps not surprisingly, self-compassion. So we have a strong sense as leaders to care for people. We want to care for our teams, we want to care for our family, we want to care for our community. We forget to put ourselves on the to-do list. If we're anywhere at all, we're all the way at the bottom. And yet it is critically important. Just as we can't truly love someone if we don't know how to love ourselves, we can't truly be compassionate leaders if we don't understand what it means to be self-compassionate.
We have to start with ourselves and then expand it to the teams, to the organization, and to the community, because you talk about the win-win or win-win-win always, right?
Yes, the win-win-win. So win is good for the company, good for the employees, and good for the community. And that ultimately is the kind of transformative work that we at the Institute, my colleagues and I, do every day, and we're very honored to do it.
Wonderful. That's a great way to finish this interview, Janice. It's been wonderful to talk to you about all these aspects.
My pleasure.
And,
thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Thank you.